Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Some very, very sad news regarding a truly great fighter. Mike McCALLUM, the Jamaican great, has passed away, age 68. He was apparently travelling to the gym to do some training, pulled over, feeling ill, and was later found unresponsive and was then pronounced dead, taken to hospital and pronounced dead. Only 68, not much of an age in this day and age, people, 90 is the new 80, 80 is the new 70. If you pass away at 68, not quite his 70 years, and he deserved more time on the planet, I think. And what a great fighter he was, Mike McCALLUM. He finished with 49 wins, 36 KOs. He lost 5 times, all on points. He was never stopped. I don't remember him ever being floored, to be honest with you. He lost 3 times out of his last 4 fights, 3 of his last 4 fights. He lost his WBC light heavyweight title to Fabrice Tioso in 1995. He had a victory over Ali Saidi, 12-rounder. That was in Paris. No, it wasn't, excuse me. The fight with Tioso was in Paris. That was in Germany because he was travelling around a fair bit, McCALLUM, towards the end of his career. Then he fought Roy Jones in America. Lost a 12-round decision to Roy. He did. Roy floored him. Roy floored McCALLUM. That's right. Yeah, I remember that. But then Roy was flying and Mike was pretty much at the end of his career. And then he had a third fight with James Toney, where he was way past his best. This, I think, was up at cruiserweight, and he lost a unanimous decision. But all 3 of the Toney fights, because he fought Toney 3 times, were certainly the first 2 were very controversial. I thought McCALLUM won the first 2. But Toney got decisions. I mean, the first one was a draw. That was in 1991. And then they fought again in 92, and Toney won a majority decision. I thought McCALLUM won both of those fights. The third one, Toney won, in my opinion. Now, I have to say that McCALLUM was no stranger to Britain. I actually saw him fight in 1993 at Hammersmith Odeon, I think it was. He fought a guy called Glenn Thomas. And I sat ringside, right up close to the action, and it was a sight to behold. Without question, as far as technical prowess goes, Mike McCALLUM was the best fighter I ever saw in the flesh. I saw other fighters, great fighters, usually as they were coming up, because I never had the money to go to the really big shows. But McCALLUM was wonderful in that fight, absolutely fantastic. And you could make an argument that he was past his best then, not by much. But he started his World Championship reign down at super welterweight. He beat Sean Mannion to win his first belt, which I think was a WBA super welterweight belt, or junior middleweight as they used to call them then. That was in 1984. And he made successful defences, numerous successful defences. He stopped David Braxton on cuts in 8 rounds. He beat a good Italian fighter. By the way, these were 15-round fights, not 12-round fights. The 15 rounds were still going. He stopped Luigi Mincello in 13 rounds. That was a good performance. That was over in Italy. He knocked out Julian Jackson. And if you know anything about boxing, you'll know that Julian Jackson was one of the most ferocious light middleweight punchers of all time. He got starched in 2 rounds by Mike McCALLUM. That was a 15-rounder as well, but didn't get past the second round. And then I think probably the most notable win of his career, again, we're talking super welterweight, was when he defended against Donald Curry, because Curry was coming off the very shocking, very bad defeat to Lloyd Hannigan at welterweight. And he said, I was completely weight drained. He got pulled out of the fight after 6 rounds on his stool. He was beaten up. I think he had his nose busted, cut eye by Hannigan. He immediately moved up to 154. He shook McCALLUM very badly with an overhand right, if I remember rightly. And McCallum's legs kind of unhinged momentarily. He didn't go down. And I think Curry was winning that fight, and winning it quite impressively. But then suddenly, from out of the blue, McCALLUM threw an enormous left hook. There was I can see it in my mind's eye now. He swung to the right, over to the left, and then pinged this perfect left hook off Curry's jaw, which had Curry flat on his back, arms outstretched, and out. And suddenly, Mike McCALLUM, after years and years of toiling away, sort of underappreciated, suddenly he was in the shop window. It was a fantastic knockout win. But in his next fight, he lost a unanimous decision, 12 rounds, to Sambu Kalambe, who himself was a very, very underappreciated fighter, very good light middleweight and middleweight. I think he was at middleweight, Kalambe. I think that was for a WBA title as well. So that was his first defeat. It was a shocker, having flattened Curry and scored a number of different 154-pound defences. God bless him, Mike McCALLUM. Snakes and ladders, isn't it? Down he goes, gets eaten by the snake. In this case, a snake called Sambu Kalambe, goes down to the start again. His first defeat, that was in 1988, but he rebuilt, no problem. He had an excellent win for a vacant middleweight title against Harold Graham. Very close fight, split decision. Harold was doing his usual Wickerbank Harold Graham style. But he had a point taken off him for spin. I think it was holding and spinning. Harold had this habit of he'd spin you so that you were facing the wrong way. A referee didn't like it, took a point off him, and that cost Harold a split decision defeat. Then he went over to America. McCALLUM went back to America because he was always flitting to France, Italy, Britain, Jamaica. He went over to America, though, and he defeated the previously undefeated Steve Collins, who would go on to be WBO middleweight and super middleweight champ. Twice beat Nigel Benn, twice beat Chris Eubank. His first loss was to Mike McCALLUM, and that was a unanimous decision over in Boston. Collins being Irish, Boston, there's a big Irish contingent there, so you could say McCALLUM went into Collins' backyard, and it was a good learning fight for Collins. I think Collins himself has said that. And then he came back to Britain, McCALLUM, and he knocked out Michael Watson in 11 rounds. At this point, the world title fights were 12 rounds, not 15. This was in 1990. Now, that beating that Watson received from McCALLUM is one of the most hideous, sustained, grinding, grueling, attritional beatings I've ever seen any fighter take. And to this day, I'm convinced that the injuries that Michael Watson suffered were not just down to Chris Eubank, but down to that beating that he received from Mike McCALLUM. It was all awful beating, and he was knocked out, completely exhausted, and then knocked out. And then I think after that he had a rematch. McCALLUM did in '91 with Sambu Kalambe, and won a split decision. Kalambe, I wouldn't say quite had McCallum's number, but his style was all wrong for McCALLUM, because McCALLUM was very much a huge body puncher. He was called the body snatcher. Enormous body puncher, but technically really, really good. But so was Kalambe. And the old line jab with a jabber? I remember those two fights. Kalambe's jab was giving McCALLUM fits, but McCALLUM did sort of squeeze a split decision win over Kalambe. He then fought for the unification, wasn't there? WBA and IBF title unification against James Toney in '91, where it was a split decision draw, and I definitely thought McCALLUM won that. Then he lost a rematch to Toney in '92, a majority decision. Again, I thought McCALLUM won that. And then he moved up to light heavyweight. He jumped over the super middleweights and unseated Jeff Harding as WBC light heavyweight champ. That was a unanimous decision over 12. That was in the United States. He defended it a couple of times, I think, and then he lost to Fabrice Tioso over in France, unanimous decision. I think he was on the floor early in that fight as well. Yeah, it took a lot to put McCALLUM on the floor. And then his career sort of petered out, and he ended with the two defeats, one to Roy Jones Jr., 12-round decision, and then the third fight with Toney, which he legitimately lost. That was a 12-rounder. So Mike McCALLUM, terrific fighter, absolutely fantastic fighter. Jamaica's best ever, I'd say so, definitely, yeah. And someone who probably quite rightly felt that he never really got his proper plaudits, because he was insisting that people like Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler ducked him, and he was not happy with Hagler. In fact, I think there was a meeting between the two, and McCALLUM was very, very cold towards Hagler, saying, you should have fought me, I should have fought you. But at the time, McCALLUM would have been a 154-pounder. But then they got Mugabe to fight Hagler. He was a 154-pounder, so I suppose maybe McCALLUM felt, you know, if I'd been given the opportunity, I could have done even more than I did. But he was a 3-weight world champ, and that includes jumping over super middleweight straight up to light heavy. So, yeah, a great fighter, a really great fighter, Mike McCALLUM. 68 in this modern era is no kind of age to be checking out. But when your time's up, it is truly up. And a great fighter. Go and have a look at Mike McCALLUM on YouTube. You'll see what I'm going on about. All right, if you've got any memories of Mike, any favourite fights of his, let me know. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, all the usual stuff, and thank you for your support for the channel. Yeah, R.I.P. Mike McCALLUM. Bye for now.